Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Newsroom. I'm Maddie Paul. Inside the Newsroom, we bring you the trending stories of the KELOLAND area, and we also bring in our newsroom staff members so that they can tell you how they put their stories together. So you see a behind-the-scenes look at how all our stories are created for our newscasts and for our website, keloland.com. I wanted to start today with a trending story that I first saw online overnight, and we're getting more information coming in from Brookings Police after the tragic loss of 20-year-old Nathan White, who was an SDSU student and a football player for their team. So we did get an update from the Brookings Police chief this morning about the investigation into his death. And I want to say right now on our screen, in the middle, you are seeing a story that was created by our reporter, Ray Yost, about the investigation. And on the farther right side of the screen, you're seeing a Facebook post from Hartford Dairy Queen, and we'll get to that in 1 second. I want to first start off with what the police chief has said about the investigation as of Thursday morning. So we do know that he unfortunately passed away on the morning of Wednesday, and that an autopsy was done in Sioux Falls at Sanford. And it does include a toxicology report, but it will take about 2 to 4 weeks for that report to be completed and for those results to get in. And the chief had said that this is pretty standard to do depending on a person's age at the time of their passing. Some other information that kind of goes into it is they're still asking for the public to provide any information that they can that went into Nate's or White's death. And as part of the investigation, it just helps determine a cause and also know if there's other contributing factors into somebody's death. And they say this is no different than investigating a 90-year-old who has passed away or anything like that. So that's the update that we have there. But also something trending that we've posted on our website is Hartford Dairy Queen will be donating 30% of all their Blizzard sales on Monday to the family of Nathan White as they are grieving this loss. They just wanted to aid the family, they said in a social media post. And that can be found on our website, too, if you're curious to learn how you can be a part and know about the sales that are going in for the family of Nathan White. Again, both these stories can be found at keloland.com, so just go ahead and scan that QR code you see on your screen. Thanks for listening to this trending story. And we're going to continue with trending stories and bring in our reporters now. I kind of teased who's going to come in next. I already said her name, but we're going to be talking about the prison, the state prison, and also the gangs that are associated inside there. What kind of activity are we seeing? We'll learn more from Ray Yost when we come back after the break. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. Another trending story that we've been following this week is South Dakota Attorney General Marty Jackley had announced that 9 gangs are tied to recent state prison crimes and riots. Joining me now is our digital reporter, Ray Yost, who looked into these crimes and gangs and how it relates on a state level and a national level. Ray, what kind of activity did you find?
Well, I kind of wanted to see what the South Dakota activity was like compared to the national level. And at the national level, the prison gangs were similar, but they're engaged in assaults. They're engaged in, trafficking of contraband inside the prisons. They're linked to maybe some contract killing within prisons, and that's maybe more on a national level. But generally, some criminal activity like contraband, assaults, kind of unrest, those kinds of things.
Okay, and who are these gangs that we found?
Well, I did a little bit of digging, and I think, a lot of people may recognize Bloods and Crips. They seem pretty prevalent, or at least some of within the top 5. I had a little, I think the warlords maybe are not as prevalent. And then you get into, vice kings, which are more prevalent and they're more common. But a lot of times it just depends. You can have some regional gangs that I would describe as regional that might be more active in South Dakota than they would be perhaps in Texas or Massachusetts, for example.
In your story that we have online at keloland.com, you kind of broke down all the information you found into questions. And so I'm going to go into the next question that you listed. How do these gangs operate in a prison?
Yeah. So when you look into the research, like we talked a little bit about, they in the prisons they may still be profiting somewhat from their gang activity outside the prison, but within the prison itself, they could be, exchanging drugs, although drugs generally aren't allowed in a prison. But they could be involved in assaults, intimidation, just crimes that you would think of that could happen both inside and outside the prison.
And then how old are these gang members?
When I looked, our specific court documents in South Dakota didn't necessarily say, okay, this was a gang member, but some of the people arrested were as young as 20 and 21. And when I talked to a Sioux Falls police officer who's involved in violent crime units, he mentioned that some of the gang members that they've encountered were as young as maybe 14 or 15 in Sioux Falls.
Wow. And then a great question that you included in your story, right, that kind of ends the piece is how do the prisons control these gangs?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about what works and doesn't work. Some of the discussion or some of the research I found is that in some cases, prison gangs can offer their own type of control because you have to follow an order of behavior, an order of hierarchy. So in some cases, they offer some of their own control. In other cases, where there's violence and maybe things don't get as controlled as well, lockdowns have been used. Curbing contraband and maybe making contraband like cigarettes less of a hot item that you want to exchange or use to make money, perhaps, or in terms of leverage. Some use some solitary confinement or restrictive housing, however you want to determine. So there's a lot of discussion about those things. But within that discussion, there's also research and things that show, okay, we have a peer group that works well with gang members who maybe want to leave or they're close to reentering society. So a former gang member that may be still in prison or perhaps comes in outside the prison to work with these folks actually helps too. We hear about gangs in prison, but they don't make up a huge percentage of all of the inmates too. So, so there's a lot of discussion. I think a lot of research still on what works best. And I think that's part of not necessarily gang focus, but part of the discussion in South Dakota is rehabilitation, reentry, and what works. Certainly that fits with what's being looked at as far as response to gangs.
Ray, thank you so much for giving us this report. And if you would like to read Ray's story online, you can find it at KELOLAND.com. Just scan that QR code that you see on your screen right now. And stick with us on Inside the Newsroom because up next, we are talking about Middle East tensions and how it could relate to cybersecurity and cyber attacks. More when we come back on Inside the Newsroom. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. For our next trending story, heightened tension in the Middle East could boost a cyber attack for the United States. And that's according to one Dakota State University professor.
There may be an interest in the Iranian regime to carry out some kind of high-profile but not particularly destructive cyber attack against the United States. This would be largely for domestic consumption. Show the Iranian people that Iran has the capability of taking the fight to the United States, but not carrying out an attack that crosses some sort of proverbial red line and triggers a much fiercer response from the United States.
Our reporter Dan Santella joining us now as he spoke to Bill Bendix yesterday about what kind of cyber attacks, reviewing it and seeing what that risk could look like. Dan, what did you hear from this professor?
Well, he said that, the heightened tension could mean a higher risk of a cyber attack. A cyber attack he defined as an unauthorized access or intrusion that could be a computer network or computer system, but it might aim to gather information. It might aim to cause harm. Joe Public, Jane Public probably wouldn't be the target for such an attack. But individuals, governments, corporations, businesses can be the target of a cyber attack, which is obviously a different type of offensive strategy than outright warfare, but it's something that Iran could employ.
Was this a story that you reached out to Bill about, or did he reach out to you?
No, it was our idea in the wake of the American attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities, and so I reached out to DSU. Obviously, DSU has a larger profile in the area for cyber expertise. He has a doctorate, I believe, in political science. And so he sort of comes from that background about how the cyber concerns or cybersecurity, cyber attacks play into the overall geopolitical environment of everything.
And is there anything that he revealed to you that kind of surprised you or made you raise an eyebrow?
I thought it was, and we just heard, that this wasn't surprising, but it was sort of reinforced that, any sort of movement from Iran could be to bolster and bring about favor domestically for that domestic audience, right? If they take some sort of step against the United States, they don't want to cross, I believe the phrase he used was the proverbial red line, but show domestic audience, Iranian people, that they can, have an offensive move against the United States, be it cyber attack or whatever kind. And we saw, it was sort of a limited strike that Iran had against the American military base in Qatar in retaliation to the American attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities. So we already saw some retaliation in a limited military strike.
Dan, last time you were here at the digital desk talking about a story you created, it was around the same theme of like this tension in the Middle East. And you had interviewed a retired U.S. general.
Lynn Hartzell.
Exactly. And, when we talked last time, we discussed your relationship with him and how you've built rapport over the years. Do you have the same relationship with Bill Bendix, or how did that relationship that you were fostering with him impact this story for you?
To my knowledge, that was my first time interviewing him. I hope I'm not wrong with that. But, this is an area with which I'm pretty familiar. I have a master's degree in international relations. I wrote a 260-page graduate thesis on human rights in the Castro's Cuba. I've studied this stuff pretty extensively. So when we're talking about international affairs, geopolitical tensions, why they're there, how things might be impacted, nothing happens in a vacuum. These tensions and the origins of them go back more than months or years, decades, really. So I think to a certain degree, I have a fluency with being able to talk with Dr. Bendix, and he's a doctor, I'm not, about topics like these. And I think there's an ease with that. I have more fluency talking about this than, say, accounting.
Oh, gosh, not the math.
So, yeah. So I think, that allows for a bit of a rapport then,
I agree, because when you cover stories that have this heavy political implication to them, you do get that kind of tone out of your stories that you understand a little bit about this language, because it's all about the language and the wording that we use.
But
go ahead.
Right. No, and I agree with you. You're right. And I think also, anytime you're talking about these sorts of topics, you want to utilize conversational terms that we all can appreciate, right? Some of these discussions can have, a lot of acronyms or a lot of sort of bigger terms, maybe. And it's like, no, we need to. It's important to couch these stories and report these stories in ways that are accessible to everyone, someone who might not be familiar with the Middle East or the Iranian regime or geopolitics or cybersecurity.
Yeah.
For example, I didn't really know what a cyber attack was. I knew it in very basic, like the high school terminology was. So I just asked Dr. Bendix, okay, break it down for me.
Yeah, straight up, what is it?
A cyber attack? Oh, he's like, okay, it's an unauthorized intrusion, access to a computer network or a computer system. I was like, oh, okay, well, I get that, right? Because I was pretty ignorant about what a cyber attack was. And so it's that type of thing, kind of breaking it down, what it is, and then why we're talking about it and all that. So, because we all have our different areas on which we have a little bit more expertise, right?
Exactly. And you're bringing it in different ways. He's bringing it. That's the whole purpose of storytelling. Dan, is there anything else that you'd like to say about creating this story?
Not especially, I think. It was along the lines of with the story I did with Lynn Hartzell a few days ago, the retired 2-star Army general. It's such a moving story. There's so many different things happening. By the time you do an interview with someone, a couple hours later, the circumstances surrounding it might be totally different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there could be an international data point, a big event, or what have you that totally changes the parameters of the story. So you just have to be mindful of that and aware of current events and follow them,
Exactly. Dan, thank you so much for joining me at the digital desk. And stay with us, viewers, because up next, we're talking about a deputy car that's making a big impact, and it starts with 3 numbers. We'll have more when we come back on Inside the Newsroom. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. Here's our last trending story for the day. The Hanson County Sheriff's Department is advocating for mental health in a very specific and special way. Joining us now is our digital reporter, Michael Dorn, who looked into how the Hanson County Sheriff's Department wrapped their car with a very specific 3-numbered number. Michael, you want to talk about it? What is the Hanson County Sheriff's Office doing?
Well, yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me here,
Of
Maddie.
course.
I really appreciate it. Yep. Yeah. This was a very special story, I feel. So to kind of describe this, just in a nutshell here. So 988 is the number for the suicide prevention hotline. Basically, if you call that number, you'll be connected with some professionals who are basically mental health experts who will sort of help you through whatever crisis you're going through in that moment. So that's a very important piece to this whole story because, as you said, that Hanson County Sheriff's Department decided to wrap one of their squad cars in that 988 number. I believe it says "There's Hope 988" right on there. So very much a cool thing for, I feel, any sheriff's department to do. But I feel the story behind this goes a little bit deeper as well. So this is not just one particular. This is not just about one particular squad car. It's kind of goes a little bit deeper than that as well here.
Well, how?
Yeah. So this goes a little bit deeper here. Sorry, give me one sec.
You're fine. 988 is a number that is available 24/7 with different chat and text options. Mm-hmm. And looking through it, it looks like you had Brandon Wingert talk to you, who said that the idea behind this car is when people see that it's just another form of, hey, it's okay, there are resources out there to reach you. And, you're right. On the car there, it says there is hope. What kind of hope is the Hanson County Sheriff's Office telling you that they want for the community, Michael?
Yeah. This is a great message, I feel. I talked to Chief Wingert here. Yeah, excuse me, not Chief. Sheriff Wingert here. Just said this is a great opportunity to kind of spread that message. Whenever this car is out in the community there, it's a very important message to just know that police are looking out for you. There are experts there available 24 hours a day who can talk to anyone at any time about anything that they're going through. And I think it's just an important message to kind of show off out there.
And we were talking about that deeper story that goes behind this story that you created, Michael. And it looks like this car came up regarding one deputy in particular.
Yes. Deputy Brown here, I believe. Yeah. So he has quite a tale here. So back in 2017, he lost his son, unfortunately, to suicide, and has basically been a mental health advocate ever since then. He has basically gone out into the community, been a huge proponent of that 988 number, been a huge proponent. He even has like these little tokens that he hands out around the community, basically saying 988, there's hope, and they have like a little kind of affirmation on the back, just basically saying there's hope. You can talk to people. go out and please find some people to talk to here. Yeah, that's the token right there. He has paid for those all on his own dime, and he has
Wow.
handed out over 1,000 of those since his time there. So he has really taken this to heart here. He has just been a pillar of the community and supporting people. And when his chief came to them with the opportunity for this, to kind of wrap this car and have this opportunity, he was all for it. So he was very excited about all of this.
Michael, this is such a strong story. I'm sure with viewers listening to it or reading your story, it really invokes a lot of deep emotions for them. So as you were writing this piece, what did you want viewers to engage with the most about the story? What was the biggest takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway for me was focusing on Deputy Brown's message here. He had a really strong thing to say here. I asked him basically, what do you feel was the most important thing about driving this car? What is the message you want to convey? And he said, I want to break the stigma around mental health. I want people to know that it is okay to ask for help. You can ask me. You can ask anyone else. There's a team standing by right now if you need help, waiting for your call. And he basically was just, I want to break this stigma. I want people to know that it's okay to ask for help. I want people to know that I'm here for them. I want people to know that if they ever need to reach out, there are people waiting for them.
Very special, Michael. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your story or creating it for the website?
Yeah, I think this was just a great story and all. I got to learn a lot here, talked to a lot of interesting people about this and about this situation here. It's just been a blast, I feel, about trying to look at this and create something special here. I think that's really awesome.
And thank you for sharing your perspective on how you created this story, Michael. And if anybody watching would like to read Michael's story for themselves, we have it online right now. Just scan that QR code that you see on your screen. And guys, that's all that time that we have for Inside the Newsroom. Thanks for joining us on another special edition. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And until then, have a great day, everyone.